I don't get the, other than being a pitchman for e-cigarettes, I don't get the conservative argument for it. It's, I just don't get it. The one thing that I learned back, I used to own an herbal tea company, and we had an herbal smoking mixture product. In fact, we had 3 of them that we sold as, stop smoking cigarettes with this, and other people were using it to, like, cut their pot. But we had Fjord and Babo's Better Blend and Volupte. And I contacted the companies that sell the flavorings for tobacco because we were thinking of flavoring our herbs so that they would be more, acceptable to somebody who smoked cigarettes who was looking to get away from cigarettes. And they sent me these little, 1 ounce bottle, little 1 ounce sample bottles of maybe 40 of their different flavors and the compounds that they used. And I had a long conversation with one of the guys who was one of the salespeople for one of these companies. This was back in 1973. And he told me how they had discovered basically about 15 years earlier, as I recall, like in the mid-50s, maybe the early 60s, sometime around in then, that they could make cigarettes radically more addictive by basically turning them into freebase nicotine rather than straight nicotine. Now, this was around the same time that the same discovery was made about cocaine. If you take regular cocaine and you smoke it or you snort it or whatever, it slowly gets into your bloodstream. I mean, if you smoke it or snort it, it gets in fairly quickly, but it takes minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes for the full high to really kick in. Right? And they discovered that that blood has a slightly acidic to relatively neutral pH, and if you and so did nicotine, and so does cocaine. And if you could make these things really alkaline, if you could raise their pH up to 6, 6.5, 7, something like that, then it would immediately bond to the blood. The blood would immediately absorb it to try to basically dilute it. And because it immediately bonds to the blood or to something in the blood, I don't remember if it was the serum or the hemoglobin or the red cells or whatever it was, but because it immediately bonds to it, it gets right to the brain just like that, bang. And so at the same time that people were discovering that they could freebase, now the word base means alkaline, right? There's acid and base. And so at the same time that people were discovering that they could make cocaine hit you faster, and this is why crack is so much more addictive than regular cocaine, they add ammonia to it, which raises its pH, which makes it more alkaline, more in the direction of lye, of Drano, of drain cleaner, of the stuff that just will burn right through your skin, in real high pHs. That by making cocaine more alkaline, it hits the bloodstream faster and it just goes wham right to the brain. And that, of course, creates a much higher hit of the addictive substance. It's for a much shorter time, but it's like whoa. And so that that changes the addiction threshold. So they started adding ammonia to cigarettes. And in the sometime between the 50s and the 70s, I frankly don't remember when. And you can track this down with a good search engine. And so now people who smoke cigarettes are freebasing. They're getting freebase nicotine. And so it goes wham, like that. You get this, and that's why a lot of people say, well, I don't like the patches, or I don't like this lozenges because they're slow. Well, they're not freebased. And in fact, there are kinds of tobacco you can buy. You can buy natural tobacco and roll your own cigarettes, and you don't get that wham hit that you get from the ones, the ones the name brand cigarettes that you buy. And it's one of the reasons that they're so unpopular, even though it's so less expensive. And, or at least it was back then. I don't know what the state of the art with tobacco is right now. I haven't really paid much attention to it since the 70s, but that was what was going on back then. And then the other thing I discovered was that all these flavorings, none of them have ever been tested by the FDA for safety. because there's a specific exemption that was written back in the 30s or 40s into the FDA rules back when the FDA was created that said that tobacco was not a product that was technically consumed. It was smoked, but it wasn't swallowed. And so any chemicals could be added to it. So there was just some god-awful stuff in there, and still is.